What is up, guys? Chunky back here on my channel. I'm finally back with my promised review of Star Wars Rogue One spoiler review. In case you didn't hear, spoilers in this video, spoilers all around. I'm talking about every character, every detail, every plot point. So if you don't want to be spoiled, if you want to see the spoiler-free review, I've put it in the first 5 seconds or so of my review. Find it there. With that said, guys, let's get straight into it. Alright, so the first big thing I took away from this film was no Star Wars crawl, no proper episode. I don't mind that. I don't think that's such a terrible thing. People are upset, people don't care. I feel like it's not really necessarily an official Star Wars episode, it's a Star Wars story. So don't worry about the crawl, it's all good. So the movie starts off with the main villain, Krennic. We see him coming down onto Jyn Erso's home planet where she's a young girl, and Krennic is coming to get Jyn's dad, Galen Erso, basically to build the Death Star. Come on, mate, you're a hostage. We need you to build this Death Star because you know better than anyone. So Jyn's mum sacrifices herself trying to save Galen, whatever, and after all that, Galen just says, look, I'll go. Fair enough. Galen goes. Jyn runs away. She goes inside this hiding hole, whatever, and we see that later on, someone finds her, opens up the latch, and it is Saw Gerrera. That's when the movie starts. Bang, and then we get straight into things. Now, the first problem I had with Rogue One altogether, and probably the most major problem in many respects, was the pacing, especially at the start. Not only was it slow, but it was disjointed, and what I mean is, it's hard to say something's very slow paced when it jumps very quickly, but it does. It jumps very quickly between planets, between characters. We're meeting all these individual characters at once. We're meeting the pilot who needs to get a message from Galen to Saw Gerrera. We're meeting Cassian Andor who's doing work for the Rebellion. And I really like that scene that we meet Cassian because it shows the toll the Rebellion has on certain people. Because this poor guy who's with Cassian says, oh, I can't move, hurt my arm, whatever. And Cassian's like, okay, shh, relax. Bang, shoots him in the back. And you really think that's something that he had to do, not that he wanted to do. And you see that. But overall, setting up the pace of this story was very slow and disjointed. But then again, it had to be done. We're meeting characters that we're only going to see in this movie for reasons you can expect. But because it's necessary, it doesn't mean that it's well done. From this point on, it's more or less just fan service and continuity that's really pushing this story forward. For starters, when we finally get back to the Rebellion and we see how they're planning to go about getting the plans for the Death Star, we see Bail Organa, someone we've seen in the original prequel trilogy, Princess Leia's dad. And he kind of hints at, oh yeah, I have someone who can get these plans to Ben Kenobi, who keep them safe. So it really explains who he's giving the plans to, Princess Leia, and why she's there in the original film, and why they're actually going to Tatooine in the first place. Tatooine wasn't just a mistake planet or an accident. They were actually going to Tatooine on purpose. Give the plans to Ben Kenobi. Ben would then go to the Rebellion, and the destruction of the Death Star would have been sorted out that way. So it really gives you more context in how Episode 4 is supposed to plan out, not necessarily how it accidentally planned out. And I'm going to get straight into it, guys. A character is back from the original trilogy. It is Grand Moff Tarkin. Yes, he's all CGI. Obviously, Peter Cushing's not around anymore. At the same time, I really appreciated the fact that they were going to put Grand Moff Tarkin back in the story. He's such a big part of the Death Star story in general, so I'm glad that he's there. And yes, he should be there. And yes, he's all CGI. You notice it. It's not the best, no CGI is reality. It is still CGI, and that is it. It is still CGI for a reason. And yes, you can tell that his face is animated. However, I'm glad they just took that risk and they put it in there. If I would appreciate one thing, I'll give Jeremy Jahns credit for this one here. If I would appreciate one thing in the final Blu-ray release, touch up the face of Grand Moff Tarkin a little bit, really tweak it up, and make it look as realistic as possible. Through Tarkin, we really meet Krennic, and we get to see more of Krennic, and we understand why he's so pressured to help and aid and assist in the building of the Death Star, in getting Galen Erso, in helping these plans stay safe, because he's really pressured by Grand Moff Tarkin, who's very intimidating, even though it doesn't seem like it. And that's another thing I really appreciated, just finding out more about the Death Star and the inception of it and the building of it and all the politics behind it before Episode 4 on both sides, both the sides of the Empire and the sides of the Rebellion. And this leads to a particular scene I want to talk about where Jyn finally sees the message from her dad, Galen, who finally admits after all this time, yes, I've been building the Death Star with the Empire, but I did something on purpose. I built a design flaw, something so small that will not be noticed by the Empire, but if you get the plans, you can see it and you can therefore destroy the Death Star. The exhaust port, a major plot hole that everyone made fun of back in the day, something that seemed very convenient at the time. It's now explained as an actual intentional flaw. I love that. It just validates the original film so much more. But then again, it does create more problems for Episode 7, because why is the same problem in Episode 7? Are you saying to me that someone actually did that on purpose as well? And if so, you're going to give us another story that's going to fill out why the Starkiller base has the same flaws that the Death Star did? It just doesn't add up as much. Another thing, especially going towards the final act, we see footage from the actual original Gold Leader. I think that footage was cut from the originals. Yeah, we see it here. It brings further context. It makes the film feel so original, feel so authentic in some ways. And at the same time, I don't know if a couple of fans noticed, we see who the original Red 5 was. This little scrawny guy. So, I can't hold it, they're coming to get me. And then he blows up, and that's how Red 5 died. And it opens up a space for Luke, who then becomes Red 5 in the original film. Not many people get to notice that. Obviously, that would have slipped right by your head if you're not really paying attention. But then again, it's great to see that they included even the smallest details in this film. Now, all fan services aside, going back to the film itself and the plot, about halfway when all the characters meet each other and they kind of really, at that point, form Rogue One, that's when the story really kicks off and it progresses at a great pace. I wish the whole film carried this pace. Like I said before, it wasn't intentional for the film to really slow down in their respective setting up its characters and really pushing the story forward. Now, going back to that scene where Jyn sees the message from her father, Galen, that's really when the story picks up. That's really when the pace comes together, everything ties together nicely, and we're finally on this one-track journey where the pace is kind of just very steady and we're heading towards the final act. Another scene I appreciated was the scene where Galen Erso dies is actually really touching because you get the feeling that Jyn and Galen haven't seen each other in that long, and that 2 seconds where Jyn comes out and says, "Dad," and he kind of just snaps, he just zones into it, he's like, Jyn. And then all that stuff breaks out. You really feel that these people are connected. You really feel like they've had a history together, they've had a past, and in that small couple seconds before everything breaks loose, there's actually a genuine moment there. And it just really enforces the fact that these characters are humans, they're real people, and if they're invested in each other, we should be invested in them too. So obviously after that firefight, Galen dies, but he says where the plans are. The plans are on Scarif, go to get the plans, and we have no choice now except to get the plans, because now we know that Galen is innocent. He's an innocent man. He's not just working for the Empire for the sake of the Death Star. And like I said, we're invested in these characters, and we actually see the rest of the characters, not just Jyn and Galen, the rest of the characters become invested in each other because they believe Jin's story, and they're all on board to go for this one mission, which is so dangerous. But they not only believe Jyn, they believe in the fact that they can really band together and stop the Death Star from being made or destroying any further planets. Now, the most interesting character, in my opinion, was Donnie Yen's character. Now, he was, look, I don't know if he was really a Jedi, if he was like a wannabe Jedi, but he seemed with the Force. He kept saying, "I'm one with the Force is with me, I'm one with the Force is me, I'm one with the Force is with me." And you really kind of understood that he really got it. He got it in his head. He might not have been an actual Jedi, but he got the theory down. He got the understanding down. Another standout character for me was K2SO. He was the droid. He was more not so much comedic relief, but he was providing a lot of the humor. He was very witty, he was very clever, and also at the same time, he gave a bit of personality to a droid, someone that really, since C-3PO or R2-D2, a lot of these droid characters aren't really given a lot of personality, aren't really given a lot of meaty kind of character exposition, anything like that. So I'm glad to see that K2SO was actually a legitimate character within Rogue One. It just makes it so much sadder when they finally get down on Scarif and they realize that not everything's as they planned, and they start kind of dying one by one. K2SO is trying to open the door for Jyn and Cassie, and he's just like kind of he's fucking dead on the thing. He's like, "Just go." Bang, he opens the door for him, and then he just gets shot, he dies, and then Donnie Yen's trying to get the switch to open the shield gates, and he's just saying, yeah, if the Force wills that switch to be open, I will open it. And he's just walking through all this gunfire, everyone just blasting at him, and he's just like, "I'm one with the Force is me, I'm one with the Force is me." And you just think at any point, he's gonna get shot. And he gets to the switch, bang, opens it up, and then poof, that's it. All good. And then everyone kind of starts breaking out, everyone starts raging out, everyone starts making their final stand, and one by one, everyone just kind of carks it. Now you can imagine that they're going to die. They're not in the original trilogy, they're not in the prequel trilogy. This is kind of a standalone story. This is where they start, this is where they end, and I kind of expected that. Now on top of all this, I've forgotten to talk about a particular character, Darth Vader himself. He's back in this film. He's used very sparingly, but he looks fantastic. He looks exactly like he did in A New Hope, and just as intimidating as ever. And we see this in the scene where Krennic goes down to Mustafar. I think this is about halfway through. He goes down to Mustafar, and we see Anakin, or Darth Vader, whichever way you want to look at him, in that glass tank. And it's such a vulnerable moment because we finally see, oh shit, Darth Vader's kind of, we already know he's a messed up dude, but it's just so vulnerable because you see him outside the armor. The armor is, that costume of Darth Vader is really what makes him as intimidating as he is. And to see him outside of that, it's always a vulnerable moment no matter where it is. What I was confused about was that hooded figure that says, "Krennic is here to see you." We're going to see who that is. Is that the Emperor? Is that maybe, I don't know, is that some random, or is it maybe Snoke? I don't know. It just seemed a bit shifty that person wasn't really identified. So Darth Vader, he's instantly commanding. He comes out, he's walking like a boss, he's nice and tall, he's huge, and he's kind of talking to Krennic because Krennic wants to be credited for the Death Star. He wants more credit. He wants more kind of recognition. And then as Darth Vader kind of walks off, you just see him and he's facing his back and he's just like, "Be careful not to choke on your ambitions." Now I'll do a terrible Darth Vader impression, but that scene there where Krennic just starts, he just starts choking, that was intimidating as shit. I was sitting there like, yeah, you can't fuck with this guy. Absolutely not. So segueing into the third act, after all this has happened, Jyn and Cassian kind of embrace each other as the planet Scarif gets destroyed in order to kind of seal the plans. Just get rid of everything. There's no evidence left. Destroy the whole planet of Scarif. And you just see kind of Jyn and Cassian embracing each other as the kind of planet just gets wiped out and just takes them out. And that was a really emotional moment because for the small amount of time that you've known these characters, you're strangely attached to them. Or at least I was. And I thought, yeah, even though I know they're going to die, looking at how all this went to plan, looking at how this actually turned out, it's actually quite emotional. And it just shows to show you how good these characters actually are in hindsight. However, this was the scene which blew my mind. So basically they're escaping on the ship and you know that they're getting the plans to Leia, but someone's after them. And you just see this corridor, so they're on the ship, they're getting away from Scarif, and you see this little corridor and it's all dark. And all you hear is... and you just see this red lightsaber light up, and everyone just sees him, and he's walking through this corridor, and he's just slaughtering rebel soldiers. He does not give a fuck. He is a nightmare, and you really get to see how intimidating he is. He is destroying everyone. And as he's walking through this corridor, this poor rebel soldier at the end, he's trying to like open the door, it's jammed, and he's like, "Please help us, help us, help us!" And then straight away, when he knows he is fucked, that help us turns into just take the plans, and he puts the plans through a little hole in the door, and he just gets impaled straight through the fucking door. Like, Darth Vader is not messing around. He wants those damn plans, and he's going to stop everyone in his path. And it's really funny because you know Darth Vader's intimidating. You've seen him fight Obi-Wan. You've seen him fight Luke. Back in the day, the action scenes weren't as choreographed as they are now. So you really see Darth Vader, and he's mowing down everyone. He's deflecting bullets. You really get a sense of how powerful he actually is. Given that Darth Vader is one of my favorite villains of all time, if not my favorite, this was such a great scene, and it really cements Darth Vader as one of the best villains of all time. So you see, after all that, Vader just misses out on the plans. They just escape and get the plans to Leia, and then someone asks Leia, "What does this mean?" And then Leia turns around. It's CGI Leia. It's original trilogy Leia, and she says, "Hope." And as she says hope, bang, it cuts in. That's the credits, and that's it. That's all we get. But at the same time, you can go straight home, you can pop in A New Hope, and it takes place literally 10 minutes later when Leia's getting the plans off that ship. It ties in very well. It's almost a direct prequel. Well, it practically is a direct prequel, and I'm so glad that this is the story we got to explain the events of A New Hope. All in all, guys, I know I've been talking in the camera for long enough. I just wanted to really pick up on certain points that I enjoyed, really elaborate on certain points which I didn't like, but then again, I would have had to go into spoilers as you've seen throughout the review. Then again, guys, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you like what you've seen, click up there to subscribe. Click down there for my last video. This has been Matt, and I shall see you soon on Chunky's Reviews.